Good afternoon. My name is Susan Waters, and I am an instructor and clinical coordinator for the vascular sonography program at the University of Findlay. I'm here today to tell you about using lecture as a teaching method, and it should take less than 20 minutes. So if at any time during this lecture you have a question, concern, comment to make, just kind of signal to me and I'll get you acknowledged at the first break that we have, where I can have an opportunity to take questions. So by definition, lecture is a long speech to an audience. It doesn't have to be a large audience. It can be an audience of 2 people. We are all equipped to give lectures in our lives. We can lecture to our spouses, our friends, our family, our children. And it's just a way of sharing information, basically. So it can come in any type of form, written or oral, audio, CDs. So it could be a textbook, a pamphlet, an informational, instructional booklet, a book on tape to review, a CD, a YouTube video. I like to Google YouTube videos to teach me stuff all the time now, especially with iOS updates. I appreciate the people who take the time to lecture to give me a little bit of input for my technical difficulties. So, lecture is a fast and efficient way to provide a large amount of information to a group of individuals, varying numbers. It's, however, not highly effective for the learner if you try to cram too much information into a short period of time. Retention is going to decrease. They're not going to get as much out of it if you bolster it up with some other types of learning methods or training methods within the lecture component as well. So in order to implement it, it is very important that you research, plan, and prepare. So you want to be an expert content person for that topic that you have. You want to research it, you want to plan, and based on some of these hints and tips I'm going to give you, you want to keep that in mind. So you're going to have learning objectives for whatever topic you will be teaching about, and gear that lecture material to those learning objectives, okay? Our goal is to gain attention, foster motivation, and increase retention for those topics. It's good if you can provide examples to previous learned materials. For example, if I'm going to teach you how to plant a garden, I won't start with picking the harvest as my first step. We have ground prep and seeding to do first. So it needs to be logical and sequential for your learners so that they can put them in their filing cabinet for easier retrieval in their minds later. So if you can take new knowledge, link it to past knowledge, it will improve retention and comprehension. Keeping in mind the rule of 7, which states that if I tell you more than 7 things, you will not be able to concentrate on any more at one time. So every learner in here can have the ability to think about 7 things actively at once. But if we add to that, it's more difficult for you and something's got to give. So we're not going to be able to pay attention to that 8th, 9th, 10th thing. And 20 minutes max time listening in one component. So if you're sitting here for 20 minutes listening to me talk at you for 20 minutes about something, I'm losing you at that 20-minute mark. I need to give you a break, use another teaching method such as a group discussion or group review, a game, something else to help you break that time and monotony. I'm also going to keep in mind that I don't want it solely to be a monologue. Even though I'm up here lecturing and it's kind of a one-way communication, I want to give the impression that it's a dialogue. So I'm looking at you, talking to you, not at you, assessing for facial cues that, ooh, I'm bored, or what, I don't understand that, so that I can revisit some of the issues that are confusing. Something else is repetition of main points. The more I repeat one thing to you, the more likely you are to recall it later. So you want to say these key points to people, particularly if they have a test or assessment at the end, to drive that home that, ooh, maybe I should write that one down. That one she said a couple different times, it must be really important. Encourage note-taking. So within the lecture method, we also would like to have some visual aids, be it a pamphlet, a booklet, you printed the PowerPoint. You want to leave a lot of white space on there so that learners can take their own notes. Not just stuff that I'm saying, but you're triggering their thought process, linking it to their own knowledge. So if they're writing their past down, that's what it's going to stick to in their own memories. Okay, other tips on deliveries are to use common language. Don't use big words that people aren't going to know the meanings of or have to look. It's going to cause confusion and distract from your overall lecture. It's also important to not read. You don't want to pull a PowerPoint or a slide or a document and just read to your audience. Chances are they already know how to read. They will just look back at your notes to reinforce the material. Your lecture should supplement all of the visual aids you give. We want our audience to be active participants, not sitting back passive learners. So you want to engage them. So I could, for example, say, think of the past of your favorite teacher or instructor when you were sitting in your elementary school. Think of your least favorite. So as I'm giving you a couple of those examples, then I might ask you to share the qualities of your favorite with you. Then we're going to compare and contrast to how it was with your least favorite. What did they have? Did you have someone monotone? Did you have someone turn around and write on the board as they were talking, so you lost half of that? If they're monotone, that voice might be distracting in itself, so that you can't concentrate on the words that are being said, you're just hearing the voice itself. Or if they have wild and crazy hand gestures or wild and crazy clothes, all of those are distractors to you, so they might not be able to as effectively get the information or point to you. Another concept is engaging humor, but it needs to be appropriate. So if I was saying, does everyone remember the character in Ferris Bueller's Day Off where he did attendance roll call and Bueller, Bueller, Bueller? You knew what he was doing and it was meant to be funny, but if you were a participant or in the audience of that class, would it have been funny or would you have been bored in that class? So another key point is also to always have a question and answer session at the end of your lecture. You always want to give an opportunity to ensure that your audience understands. Or perhaps they're going to ask a question that their neighbor also had, or share a story that drives your point home a little bit more. So it reinforces. It's all reinforcing the information, supplementing the information that you gave. Strengths and weaknesses of using lecture as a teaching method. So there are several strengths, which are, again, it's very, very efficient to give information to a group. We can easily assess it. It's a very low cost. Their overhead would be your space, a computer, perhaps a projector, a DVD player, printed materials, so a printer and toner, which most people have easy access to these days, in particular if they're in a business to give a lecture. So less costly, very efficient to give a large presentation or information to people. It's familiar to most audience members. You've all at least encountered some type of lecture before, so they're comfortable. You might not have that comfortable or sense of, ooh, I can go in and sit and listen, or I don't want to participate in a group setting. I don't like group projects. But if you give them that information first, it's a little more comfortable to be a part of a group when they're presented with those skills. I can also control the pace. So say I'm giving a lecture to a group of doctors. While I'm going to assume all of the doctors know the anatomy that I'm going to speak about, is it a safe assumption or do I need to review that basic anatomy? So as I'm looking at you, I can say, oh, that looks boring, boring, boring. I better move my review of anatomy up a little bit quicker. Get that done, get onto the meat of why they're really here and what they most enjoyed to learn for my presentation that they're going to benefit with in the future. It also allows me to provide you information very up to date. Technology changes rapidly. So if it's a printed material, it takes a lot of time, revisions, a greater number of people than just providing a lecture to a group of people. So it's very timely, up to date. Weaknesses would be that there are great skill needed to just speak in front of people. And then when we talk audience engagement, that's an additional skill in order to provide a lecture. So Not everyone has the ability just walking in off the streets to do it. You have to develop those things. This one-way communication for people who don't have those skills developed allows you to sit there and be very passive in your learning. And if you're passive in your learning, you can get lazy and not take advantage of the full material and the lesson, the skills that I'm attempting to teach you. Lectures are often perceived as boring. So if I say, you're welcome to come to a guest speaker tonight, you're like, oh, I don't want to sit through a lecture again, right? But if it's an engaging lecture and you've had good experience, you're more likely to do that. It only appeals to auditory learners. So some of the other learning styles may not get as much from just a one-street lecture or one-way lecture as some of the auditory learners. One of the major weaknesses would be that I cannot assess you just from the lecture component only to know if you've developed, comprehended, understood the skills, and are going to be able to utilize them in your future. I have no way of providing individual feedback to you from just this mode of training method. Now, in summary, I hope you can take some of these skills, knowledge, and be able to make your lectures. Think about them even when you're talking one-on-one with someone. Is there something I can improve to do better? Am I speaking clearly, concisely? Am I sharing the knowledge? Do I know what I'm talking about? All these little hints and tips. And I wish you luck. Does anyone have any questions, concerns, comments? Okay, thank you for your time.